Hey everybody, welcome to the Insight Cafe podcast. I'm your host, Nikon Gormley, and today, we have a very special guest, Sandy Krot. And I'm going to intro you, and then we'll get started. Okay, so Sandy Krot is a human dimension consultant at her own private practice. She's a consultant at Insight Principles, Inc. She's the co-author of my favorite book, Invisible Power with Robin Charbit and Ken Manning. Sandy's vision is to make the workplace a setting for creative performance as well as the elevation of the human spirit. She's also a pioneer in translating a principled understanding of human thought to leadership and organizational effectiveness. Welcome to the show, Sandy.
Thank you, Nikon. This is a treat. It's a treat to speak to you and whoever else is out there.
Well, this is my treat. I've been hearing about you since I started learning about the principles from Michael Neal. He would tell us stories about when you were mentoring him and coaching him.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you're old. You know, everybody talks about you.
So where are you calling in, and where are you right now in the world?
I live in the state of Washington, in the United States, in the beautiful state of Washington, in the very northwest corner of the state of Washington, almost as far north as you can get in the continental United States. I'm just about less than 100 kilometers, maybe 75 kilometers from Canada.
Wow, like that really, you're really up there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the treat is all mine today, and having read your book and learning so much about you and benefiting so much from the content that you shared. And today's theme is about innate leadership. But before we get into that, I'd love to give the listener some context on your story and where you started and how you came to be here today.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, we're going back into ancient times here. I started my career as in the mental health field. I was a mental health counselor. And I'd been in the field for about 5 years, and I was burned out after 5 years. I just didn't, I wasn't getting results. And so, you know, I didn't have any job satisfaction. And personally, I wasn't happy. I had done something that I thought might be another avenue. It was called Outward Bound. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's an outdoor wilderness program. And I found that to be very enlightening. It helped me realize I was stronger than I thought I was. So I thought, okay, I'm going to become an Outward Bound instructor. But I couldn't afford the tuition. So I stuck in the field. All right, I'm going to stay here just a little bit longer, save all my money, and become an Outward Bound instructor. That was my plan. And I took a job working in a facility that had housed teenagers that had run away from home or had been thrown out of their house, or the state had taken them away from their parents. And I was doing family counseling, which was more accurately called family refereeing, because it was just really difficult cases. But the office next door to me, there was another counselor doing exactly the same work, but I could hear laughter going on in her office. And her families would come out of her office sometimes with their arms around each other. My families were bolting out the door. There was no laughing going on. So I invited her to coffee. Her name was Rita Shuford. She's my dearest friend now. And I said, what are you doing in there? What's your methodology? What treatment strategy do you use? And she says, well, I don't really use a methodology or a treatment strategy. She's, this is 1980. Um, it's a long time ago, but I still remember this conversation because she said something to the effect of, I, I teach my clients that there is a good feeling that lives inside of them. And the only reason they don't experience it is because of their thinking. And I said, yeah, that's it. She says, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm like, well, what about their pathology? What about their history? What about their systems? What about their communication? Oh, I don't talk about that. She said, I'm like, what? She said, well, I listened. She said, I learned from this guy named Sydney Banks.
Mm.
I said, oh, what university does he teach at? And she said, oh, he's not a professor. He was a welder. I said, what? I'm like, I'm complete. My mind is like blown. And she says, yeah, he was a welder. He had an enlightenment experience. And she said, I just find what he says, it's really changed my life. And so I share it with my clients. She said, I have an audio tape if you want to hear it. And so she hands me this audio. This is the 80s. She hands me this audio tape. And so I take it home and I listen to it. I can't make heads or tails of it. He's got a Scottish brogue. If everyone has
Mm.
ever heard Sydney Banks, got a Scottish brogue. Plus, he's talking about. I have no idea what he was saying. It made no sense to me. I gave it back to her, but I kept. You can't walk away from results. I couldn't,
Mhm.
and so I kept talking to her and having coffee with her, and she'd share more and more. And eventually, Sydney Banks came to town to speak at the university. And I went to hear him. I got nothing out of it. I couldn't, I, it was just so far removed from my academic training, how I saw life. It was so simple. I just couldn't grasp it. But I kept having coffee with Rita so that was January of 1981. December of 1981. She says to me, we're going up to Vancouver, British Columbia to hear Sid again. Will you want to come? I thought, oh, what the heck? I'll come. Now, this time, for whatever reason, I heard something, but I only heard one thing.
Mm.
And I heard, you live in a world of thought. That's what I heard. I heard it in my body. My whole body vibrated. I can't even explain it to you. I just knew I knew it was true, but I didn't know what it meant. I knew it was true. I didn't know what it meant. I left that program and I thought, okay, this, I gotta learn more. I gotta see what this means. And I just went about my life and I kept working with my clients, and slowly I started to have insights of my own. And I started to see what he meant by you live in a world of thought. And from that point on, I just kept learning. And it just totally changed how I work with my clients. And I spent the next 20 years working in the mental health field in a variety of settings, um, in the school system, doing marriage and family counseling, doing individual counseling. Um, and then in 2000, I had the opportunity to work with business people, in business, with leaders, which I was reluctant to do because I didn't know anything about business. And I didn't know anything about leadership, really. But I knew about the mind, and I knew about how the mind worked. And I was able to translate my understanding of thought into leadership. And so I've been doing that since 2000. So that's
Wow.
a
Thank you. Thank you for the origin story. As you were telling the story, I could feel in my body as you were discovering that. And I love the way you shared in the beginning of the story how your first reaction to what you had heard was it can't be that simple. What are your pathology and like what are the techniques? And I love how that's going to link directly to what we're going to talk about, which is leadership, because I feel leadership in today's world is one of the most overcomplicated things that people try to get right because they think if they get it right, nothing bad will happen in their business or they will have a clear path to success. And I want to read something from your book to kick us off as a conversation point. All right, so it says, page 242, Innate Leadership, from the Inner Dimension of Leadership. Leadership is an innate characteristic built into your design for success. Clarity and confidence are at its core. When you are balanced and feeling at home in yourself, it is easy to see with perspective, and your insights move you to respond intelligently in ways that are productive for you and others.
pretty good, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I remember reading the first time I read that, it felt true in my whole body. I was like, yeah. And I couldn't quite describe as to why it felt true, because before I had tried to study leadership in terms of if I could just become this, if I could find these character traits and become this leader in my head, then everything else should work. And when I read that, it was the flip side, like, wait, these things are already inside me. And it made me wonder if I was looking in the wrong direction. So I really hope you could speak to that. And maybe what are the misunderstandings of leadership in what you
Yeah,
see?
that's great. That's great. Whenever we do a program, Ken and Robin and I, the first thing we do, we often will work with a leadership team.
Mm,
We'll also work I'll work with individuals. So sometimes I'll do coaching with individuals. But when we work, and we'll do the same thing, we work with an individual or leadership team. We start with this exercise. We ask people to take a moment and think of a time when they were at peace on the inside.
mm,
So you can close your eyes if you want to. Just think of a time. Doesn't matter where you were, what you were doing, doesn't matter. Think of a time when you were at peace on the inside. And then we ask them to write down the qualities that they notice in themselves. And
mm,
then they share them. We write them up on the board if it's with the group. And even when I'm doing a
mm.
one-on-one, I'll write them up on the flip chart. And it's interesting what they've come up with. If you look at, and we've done this exercise, I don't know, hundreds of times. The qualities they come up with are absolutely the qualities of leadership.
Fascinating. On their own, like the place where you
Yeah,
wouldn't think to look. Like, can you give
yeah.
some examples?
They'll say mental clarity,
Mm,
They'll say presence.
Mm,
They'll say human connection.
mm,
They'll say hopefulness, or anything is, that's feeling of anything is possible, courage,
mm.
confidence. And then we'll ask them, do you do those? Do you make those qualities happen? Or do they just show up?
Wow.
And you see their faces, they're like, uh, yeah, I guess they just show up.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. Well, they just show up. You don't make them happen. You're not forcing them. You're not techniquing them. So there's something inside, a source, a resource that is available to humanity that is sorely underutilized
Hmm.
because we're so busy trying to do it, trying to make it happen, thinking about it, pushing.
Hmm. What do you make of that? That it seems to me that the more you try and make it happen, the more you push it, the further away you get from that source. And I was speaking to a client before this call on how it was almost a premise that if they didn't do something about it, they felt like a loser, they felt inadequate, and that just by worrying about it or trying to do something about it, it sated their psychology, or it soothed their
Mm.
psychology. And when we looked at it and we said it out loud, it sounded kind of weird. Like it didn't really make that much sense that you would do something just to not worry. And listening to what you're saying now is all these qualities they're generated from within, or they're already there. And
Mhm,
almost if I
mhm.
understand, they come out when they're needed or when you give them the space.
Yeah, yeah. The biggest misunderstanding in the world today,
Mm,
if I had a magic wand, I would correct this misunderstanding and the world would be a completely different place. But the biggest misunderstanding in the world today is the notion that our experience of life, the feelings that we have, the perceptions that we have, are created out there, and we're the innocent receivers of them.
mm,
That life is coming at us. That's what it looks like to people. And since life is coming at us, we think we have to get what we need from life. So if we think there's something we have to do in order to feel confident, or
mm,
good about ourselves, or you know happy.
mm.
It looks like it has to come from the outside. It's just running people ragged.
Yeah.
It's a complete misunderstanding,
Mm,
but it's rampant. And um, what I've been trying to do my ever since 1981 is to help correct that misunderstanding. That no, actually, it's your experience of life, the good, the bad, and the ugly,
yeah.
is all being crafted inside your mind with the gift of thought. And that's where you need to look. for everything, and it's a, that's the good news, because it's a gift. The gift of thought is in there, and it's an unlimited gift, allowing you to create the very feelings you're out there searching for. They're right there under your nose.
Mm. I had a
And we
yeah, I had a conversation recently with Mavis Karn and Mavis, and she said that, like Buddha would say that everybody is enlightened, they just don't know it, and that's the
they just
problem.
don't.
And that reminds me of what you're saying, like we have all the qualities we're looking for inside of us if we would just turn our attention away from everything that's distracting us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll tell you a story. I love this story because it's I mean, some of the details are unique, but the message is very ordinary. I was asked to coach this leader. Um, she it was her company. She worked for a Fortune 100 company. And there was a merger. And if anyone in your audience has ever gone through a merger, it's chaos.
Yeah.
It's really difficult, and roles are changing. People are getting laid off. It's very confusing. And she was asked to take a new role. It was a promotion and a new role. But her old role was not filled. So she was doing two roles, two full-time roles. And she's the kind of person who will do whatever she can to make sure both those roles are done. In addition, she was married and had 4 children. Uh, her daughter and 3 stepchildren. One of her stepchildren was a teenage stepdaughter who she and this stepdaughter had a very contentious relationship. So she's trying to do 2 jobs. She's got a family life that's very, very busy and demanding, and a stepdaughter who is she's having really difficulty with. So nobody's happy. Her husband's not happy with her. Nobody's happy because she can't possibly do these 2 full-time jobs. And she's just stressed. So I meet her for the first time, and mostly I listen to her for quite a while, because she's just in overwhelm. And I'm listening, and she keeps saying the same phrase over and over again, which strikes me. She says, "I don't know why I can't figure it out. I don't know why I can't figure it out." She must have said it in the hour and a half I spent with her. She must have said it 20 times. I don't know. So towards the end of our time together, I said to her, "What do you mean, I don't know why I can't figure it out?" And she sat back and she said, "Well, when I was in college, when I was at university, I met my soulmate," she said. We were just inseparable. And we finished school, and then we got married, and she said we were just so happy. And we were married for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and then I got pregnant. And she said we were just over the moon happy. She said, I had the most perfect life. And when I was 6 months pregnant, my husband dropped dead. Just dropped dead. Just cardiac arrest, no warning, nothing. And she said, don't get me wrong, I was devastated. I lost my soulmate. But she said, I was 6 months pregnant. I just had to keep it together. And she said, I kept it together, and baby was born, and my whole family thought I'd fall apart once my baby was born, but she said, I didn't. You know, I was a new mom. She said, she said, I never fell apart. She said, again, don't get me wrong. I was grieving, but I was fine. She said, I did that. I figured it out, she said.
Mm.
And how come I can't do it this time? And I said to her, what makes you think you figured it out? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, what makes you think you figured it out? And she sat back in her chair, and I could see it hit her. And I said, you did not figure it out. You followed the wisdom in you. It showed you the way. And it'll show you the way now. You're just not listening because you're trying to figure it out. And it's one of those moments where you know you've hit home. And I just let her be. And I wasn't going to see her for another week. And I see her the following week. She looks like a completely different person. And she says, you know what I did after that session? She said, I took 3 days off. I said, you're kidding. She said, nope, I took 3 days off. She said, and the first day, I just took the day to myself. And she lived on the East Coast of the United States. And she said, I walked on the beach. It's the winter, but I just walked up on the beach, nobody there. I just let my mind rest. She said, I had all kinds of new ideas about work, but I didn't work. She said, the second day, I told my stepdaughter to play, I called my stepdaughter in sick at school. And we stayed home and watched movies all day and hung out. We had the best day. And the third day, I told my husband to take a day off. And we spent the day together. So I went back to work after 3 days. The work was ridiculous. More work than but she said, I didn't have any stress. And then she says to me, you got to tell me what happened. So now I could teach her, I could teach her what happened. I could explain to her how she's, there's a fork in the road. You can keep working at life, or you can understand how your mind works. And when you learn how your mind works, you work with it. You work in harmony with the intelligence that's in you. And you get the best of that world. You get the best of who you are. And that's what leaders have to find. They have to find that. It's not that there's not hard work to do. There's lots of hard work to do. Whew. I mean, some people are, I mean, there's a lot, they're expected to do a lot. And there are times in companies where people's jobs are at stake, and or there's lives at risk. I mean, there's it's not all fun and games, but to know that the answers we seek are inside allows us to settle down and to find to really find those answers.
What a beautiful story. I think I
Yeah.
I did this podcast just to capture that story and be able to share it with everybody who's willing to listen. Thank you so much. And the way you told it, I was right there with her. And I was as you were telling the story, I had some notes on the things I wanted to ask you about, like connection and synergy and communication. I'm like, yep, yep. What a beautiful story, and how wonderful it is that you get to be a catalyst for leaders like that. And as you were sharing that story, what occurred to me is I see it now. I used to find value in, or get value for myself in figuring things out. And I wanted to write an article about my worst habit because somebody asked me, like, what's your worst habit? And I really sat with it like for a while, and all the usual stuff came up, but I was like, no, it's not that. Like overeating or staying up too late, playing video games. Like, no, it's not that. My worst habit, my worst habit is when I get insecure, I rush to figure things out with my intellect because it's what I think I can control. And it makes it like kind of soothes my psychology, like, oh, I'm doing something about it. And in hearing your story, I realized it really landed that that's not where the answers are, and B, I don't really need to do that. And just like your client, there's so much more that comes through from a peaceful and quiet mind. It reminds me of my client who's a captain in the Thai army and a sharpshooter for the Thai national team, and she just recently got selected for the 2023 Asian Games. And she called me one day. She's like, can we go for a walk? Because that's what we do. And she says, I have a lot on my mind. And I listened to her share all these stories of things she was trying to figure out in her mind. Like, how do I manage going to the Asian Games and training? And then my role as an army captain, I'm going to get promoted to major. And then what came up for me to tell her was, I don't think the problem is that you have a lot on your mind. I think the problem is that you believe all of it to be true. And given how the mind works, like, yeah, I would probably be as stressed as you are. And and the other thing that came up in our conversation was something that was so simple. Even when I said it, I was like, I questioned, like, is it really that simple? Like, yeah, it's when you have rainstorms, if you sit still long enough, the rain will pass. But if you run with it, you might even run the same direction as the rain. And
It's so beautiful. Well, you were
yeah,
listening. See, that's
yeah,
the thing.
yeah, yeah.
This is the simple thing we forget. We forget to listen. You're listening. You're listening, and you said the most obvious. When you're listening, you see the obvious.
Mm. And then what a wonderful thing too for leaders to know that this is what's on offer in this conversation and this principled understanding of human thought. And that when you listen, the answer, everything you're looking for is just right in front of you. And it just gets muddled over by overthinking and overanalysis and trying to do things. Wonderful. And which leads me to my next topic that I wanted to ask you about, which is, I think in working with leaders, this is probably, I would say, one of the top things people like, or at least they complain about, which is difficult people. Like, I'm a leader and I have to deal with this person. So I'm going to read a quote from the book again on
Oh yeah.
difficult people. And and I think it's actually, I'm just going to say it. It was what I loved about in the book about dealing with difficult people, and it said that, you know, when you see difficult, you have to deal with difficult.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you
Everything you see, yeah.
to.
I know the quote because I wrote it. It's
Yeah, good.
when you see a difficult person, everything you say and everything you do is going to make it worse.
Please say more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's because when you see someone as difficult,
Mm,
it means you're already, in order to see somebody as difficult, you're already thinking about them as difficult. So you're thinking about them as difficult, which means you've decided, you've judged, another way of saying it,
mm,
you've judged them to be difficult. And you're going to come up with strategies based on that judgment versus seeing somebody as an unknown or a blank slate. Or if you were really enlightened, you see you see somebody as, you know, a beautiful soul. You know,
mm.
I'm not enlightened, so I try to see people as more neutrally, you know, just a blank
Yeah.
slate. Like I don't know. I
Mm,
don't know. Um, I have a friend, a colleague. Her name is Cheryl Bond. She's a coach, and she's a hoot because she loves to work with the people who nobody else wants to work with. Give her give her the people, give her the ones who don't want to coach. If don't if you give me all the clients who don't want to coach, give me the clients who everybody hates,
yeah.
I'll take them.
Wow.
She loves them because she just is curious about them. She just goes into total unknown. Tell me
Mm,
about yourself. And she listens with nothing on her mind, and she learns, and she discovers a human being.
mm.
And there will be something in what she learns about that person, which will be a doorway into connection with that person. But when you're talking to a difficult person, someone you see as difficult, you're already, it's subtle, but you're already prejudiced
Mm,
toward uh, strategies for difficult people, and
mm.
it'll limit you as to what creative solutions you're going to come up with.
It's like you're
If
putting
you know,
yourself,
it's
yeah,
a
keep going.
yeah, you're limiting yourself. It's just
Mm,
like when you're like, I mean, this is a maybe not the best analogy, but when we're for those of you who are parents out there, when you're upset with your kid, how creative are you in terms of parenting strategies? You're just not. When your kid looks like a pain, you're just not very creative.
mm,
Versus when you step away and you calm down and you're in love with your kid again, but you still have to come up with some kind of consequence or punishment or whatever. But you'll be so much more creative about it
mm.
because now you see the kid in a different light. So how we see another human being, how open we are, um, how connected we are, that's going to make a huge difference as to how much we're we're going to be able to influence them. And that's
Mm.
not to say you can't influence somebody when you're mad at them or yell at them. You can. I've had people say things to me when they've been mad at me, and it hit me and it
Mm.
changed me. That can happen, but the odds are slim.
That's really helpful. What occurred to me is going back to the first part of this conversation is noticing, having that awareness that, wow, like this person looks really difficult to me. Like that's what I saw fresh in that. And I'm just like,
Yeah,
okay, this is a difficult person. If I see difficult, it's like, actually, no, I've already made up that this person is difficult. And that's so useful for just everything. Like as soon as I notice, like, oh, this is difficult, and then and that's too, I remember because I always had a hard time, like, well, what if it were easy? I always hated that because to me, was not everything is easy. And then realizing that, well, that too is thought. That is
yeah,
easy. And what I really see fresh now is beneath easy and difficult, it's all clean slate. And I get to show up fresh. And showing up fresh for the first time looks like a better idea to me than trying to make it easier, trying to make it difficult. Just show up fresh and let, as Elsie Spittle would say, let wisdom do the heavy lifting.
right, right, right. It's why, there's that phrase beginner's luck.
Yeah.
It's why beginners are so good at things because they're clueless. They don't know it's supposed to be hard or easy or anything. They just kind of um, just show up, and uh, you'll often hear stories of people who do things like, you did that? Yeah, I didn't know it was supposed to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so refreshing. As soon as you said that, the quote that I think Michael shared it, and I forgot who said it, but he said, like, was it professionals? Like we all know that we're all just making it up, and amateurs are trying to be professional, but the professionals know we're just all making it up.
Yeah,
And I really see the value in beginner's mind, and that's true. There have been a lot of things that I've done myself that nobody told me it should be difficult. So one of the things, I have another business, a martial arts business, where I teach taekwondo to young kids, and we teach like 400 kids a week. Over the past 10 years, we've taught 4,000. And some people look at me like, how do you teach? How do you like keep 10 5-year-olds in line? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's not that hard,
right.
because nobody told me it was difficult. I just showed up and show up and connect with kids, and we have fun and we kick stuff, and we have a great time. They go home hungry and tired, and have this, like, they had a great workout because the kids don't
That's
look
great.
difficult to me.
Yeah, and that's my point. Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
really, really helpful to know that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
insight. Yeah.
Yeah. And now you can't control what comes to your mind.
Mm.
Nobody
Yes.
can.
Yeah.
So you may get instantaneously this thought, this person is difficult.
Mm.
So, oh well. But if you know it's just a thought
Mm.
and it can change, it will. It'll move on if you don't nail it, if you don't keep thinking it, it'll be replaced. So,
Mm.
particularly if you're looking for it to
That
be
makes a lot
dismissed
of
again.
sense, right? Like
Yeah.
now that I've already decided this person's difficult, I'm going to come up with evidence for it at every single turn, right?
Yes. 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 Do you notice that? It's it's um it's fascinating, the power of thought. When you will look for evidence
Mm.
of what you already think. I mean, there's research, study after study after study that shows us that.
Yeah, and there's wonderful case studies in your book about managers or leaders dealing with their CEOs or C-suite, in that people who were difficult became not difficult just because the person dealing with them was what came from a place of curiosity and clean slate.
Yes.
And one of the things I loved in your book about difficult people, it said that when you approach things from a clear mind, you'll hear wisdom even in things you don't agree with. Like you'll hear, and I thought, wow, that's so much useful information that I miss just because I've already decided that everything this person's going to say is crap.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And yeah, people you don't agree with, if you can have the heart to listen to them, even if you don't agree with it, you'll hear their logic
Mm,
and you'll see how it is they got to the way they think. I mean, sometimes I'll do this with my partner. Like he'll have ideas like, "What? How did you get here?" But then I'll listen to him. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I still don't agree with him, but I see how he got to from point A to point B.
mm,
And then we can have a dialogue because otherwise it, he we're doing this. It's like we don't make he doesn't make any sense to me.
mm,
So yeah, there's so much opportunity for us as human beings to make connections, to understand one another. If we just can let that prejudice thinking, that initial those initial thoughts, we can just let them go, let
mm.
them flow out of our mind and wait for something better. We'd be able to work the problems of the world out in no time.
That's that's my hope. I think what you just said really gives me a lot of hope in the work that I'm doing as an impact catalyst, as a coach, to give this to more leaders and people who, so we can work out more of the problems in the world wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, we're coming up on time, and even though I feel like I could talk to you all day. Well, okay, I have one last question. Given that you're on the front lines and working with leaders and very large organizations, what do you see fresh about leadership in your work? What's new and fresh for you?
What I'm going to say is may not sound revolutionary, but it's the truth. What I see fresh is more about the innateness of leadership. I hate to come full circle, but
Yeah.
that is really I just last week
Hmm.
I was I revisit Sydney Banks's materials often, and I was watching a video of him, and I got another. No, it was a couple of weeks ago. Another appreciation for the innate nature of every wisdom in everybody. And so the last couple of weeks, my sessions with my coaching sessions, I've just gotten a deeper appreciation for the innate leadership in people.
Hmm.
And what that's done for me as a coach is it's made me ask more questions.
Hmm.
Whereas I think I might have been inclined to teach
Hmm.
a little sooner,
Yeah.
I was asking a question instead of teaching.
Wow.
And what that did was I would watch the client teach him or herself, which is exactly what I wanted, of course,
Right.
because people tend to remember when they teach themselves.
Hmm. Again, I'm so happy that was recorded. Wonderful. Okay. So the last question I ask every
Oh,
guest when they come in, this one is like the last question, is if you could give a gift to the world or to the people listening, what gift would that be?
well, I would give everybody Sydney Banks's materials, frankly.
Done. We'll do that. We'll do that for you.
I mean, I know there have been wise who have written throughout the history of humanity. I just think that he, with his articulation of the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, I think he was able to create such a simple message that I wish that everyone, I mean, there is access to all his work now on the internet,
Mhm.
which is great. Um, but I
I'll
wish there
I'll
were,
I'll post those links in the description in this video.
yeah,
So
he's a YouTube channel now.
yeah,
So there's,
yeah, all the lectures, the Washington, Lester,
yeah, yeah,
Long Beach, Hawaii.
yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah, there's a newly released one called The Insight.
Mm,
Highlight that one. It's on you. It's on the YouTube channel.
sure. I remember that one where he shares having the first deep insight that led
Yeah,
to this principled
yeah, yeah,
understanding.
yeah, yeah. It's a different version of that story, but
Mm,
I like this version. It's a little more has I don't know I don't know. Maybe it's because I just listened to it recently, but I like it.
okay. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, for your time, your attention, your work, your wonderful stories. I am so grateful for this conversation. And
You're
I'll put,
welcome, and thank you. Thank you
yeah,
for your work. And I mean,
oh,
you're
thank you.
younger, so you're going to be doing this a lot longer than me. So keep it up. I'm
Thank
thrilled
you.
with the younger generation.
Right, and I'll post all your links in the description. So anybody looking to find Sandy, hang out with Sandy, I'll post a link to the book. You can find all that in the description. So, and with that, I'm gonna say thank you, and I'm gonna stop recording, and we'll speak soon. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.